I think one of the hardest things for people to do these days, at least for a lot of people, is to ask for help. For as long as I can remember, I've always tried to be one of those people who has always been fairly self-reliant and just kind of takes care of things on my own just because, partially because I had to and partially just because that's the kind of person I am. I like to feel self-sufficient, and so I've always tried to push myself to get things done without asking for help. I think a big part of the problem is that society and our culture have this tendency to make us feel as though if we ask for help, we're in a position where we need help, that we're not adequate, that we failed, that we're not as good as maybe the person next door to us is. And it's really sad that in today's day and age that we're still ashamed to feel like we need to feel like a lesser person if we run into a situation where we do need help. And what I mean by this is whether it's asking for help moving a couch, or if it's help getting through a tough situation, or whether it's you need help paying a bill, or whatever the case may be, just saying, hey, friend, family member, person I know, I can't do this on my own, so I'm asking you to step up with any resources you may have to help me with this situation. I think it's come to a point in our lives where it's hard to do that because we're afraid people are going to look down on us for asking for something as simple as help. Over the course of the last year, I've spent an unfortunate amount of time in the hospital. And while that time sucked and it was miserable and it literally changed my life moving forward, not all of that change was bad. I mean, yeah, I'm currently in end-stage renal failure, which means my kidneys are basically at the point of failure. I have to go to dialysis 3 days a week. I've got all kinds of other medical issues that may or may not ever get better, that I will probably have to live with for the rest of my life. And that sucks. But what do you do? I mean, that's just par for the course for me in my situation and in my close personal family situation moving forward. In addition to the negative stuff that happened with me medically, there was some good stuff that came out of everything that happened with me last year. I met some really amazing people, whether it was doctors or nurses or other people in the hospitals and the clinics and everywhere I had to go to deal with all of my medical stuff. I've run into some really, really amazing people. Now let's be clear here. I've also met some real assholes, but I will say that the number of assholes that I've met are far, far less than the people who are out there to help. Some of the doctors and the nurses and the staff that I've run into, Rachel and I are now friends with on Facebook. We have their personal cell phone numbers. We reach out to them when we have questions. Not because we asked if we could, but because a lot of them insisted that we did. A lot of people that I've run into over the course of the last year have taken a personal interest in my story, partially because we became friends, partially because I've got a very interesting medical case, but partially because I've learned that there's a lot of really good people out there who really want to do as much as they can to help people around them whenever they can. And I can honestly say, with everything that's happened and all of the people that I've met, I may not be here without a lot of them, without doctors taking extra time to study my case and what was going on with me. If it wasn't for the nursing staff going out of their way to come in early or stay late to help, if it wasn't for those people, I may not be here today. And I know that there's an immediate jump to, well, that's their job. Sure, I'm not going to argue that. But a lot of these people went above and beyond what their pay grade called for them to do. A lot of these people went above and beyond just helping me. There were several times where while I was in a coma, Rachel came to my rescue essentially and yelled at doctors and nurses and other staff members to get answers for things, to find out why, Group A wasn't talking with Group B. And, Rachel helped me so much last year and continues to help me even now. And sure, you could say, well, that's because she's your wife. Let's be clear. She wasn't when all of this started. Rachel and I got married after I came out of a coma. We were in the ICU when we got married. And again, the staff went above and beyond to put together an impromptu wedding because it turns out that only an hour or so after we got married, I was put in an ambulance and I was taken to Denver. They didn't have to do that, but they did. They went above and beyond to make sure that this one thing for us happened. And, we've made lifelong friends with some of these people as a direct result of that. One of the other areas of help that I've always hated asking for, and that's financial help. I've always tried to make sure that I was, again, self-sufficient enough to not have to ask for help. But again, last year I spent almost 6 months in the hospital and I wasn't able to work, and Rachel wasn't able to work because I was in the hospital, and she literally stayed by my side that entire time, minus a few times where it was just too much and she had to go home. She had to step away, and I commend her for being able to do that, because I know it wasn't easy. I know that was a very, very difficult thing for her to do. But the reality is neither of us were able to work. And so that means neither of us were bringing in an income. If it wasn't for friends and family, and honestly, even some perfect strangers, if it hadn't been for them coming forward and helping us financially over the course of the time that I was in the hospital, we would have lost our house. We would have lost everything. That actually kind of leads into something else that neither Rachel or I have ever talked about in our videos, and that's, I got home in July, and of course, even at that point, I was still so afflicted by everything. When I got home from the hospital, I couldn't walk. It took me 3 weeks to even be able to get on my feet, and that's a literal thing. I was in a wheelchair for the first 3 weeks that I was home. So and there was a lot of doctor's appointments, and there was still a lot of stuff that I needed help with. Even doing simple things like going to the bathroom, I needed help with that. So even for the first several months that I was home, I was still completely dependent on Rachel to get me to doctor's appointments and make sure that there was food to eat, whether that meant her going to the store or cooking or whatever. I was confined to a wheelchair. So again, for several months after I got home, neither of us were bringing in any income because we were still waiting for my disability to come through. So a lot of people just assumed that once I got home from the hospital, everything was going to be okay. And that's when actually things got harder, because people were all up in arms to help while I was still hospitalized, because that was a very visceral thing. You could see me in the hospital. Even though I was posting pictures and videos and things like that saying, hey, I'm doing better, I was in the hospital, and that gave people a surrounding where they understood that I was in desperate need of help. Even for months after I got home from the hospital, we kept our GoFundMe going, because it was even at that point, it was at that point where a lot of those donations and a lot of that help kind of stopped, because people saw that I was home, so people just assumed that things were getting better. And while physically and medically speaking, yes, things were getting better, financially, that was actually one of the hardest times that we faced, because while we were home, or after we got home rather, people just assumed that everything had gone back to normal. And that wasn't the case at all. In fact, when I got home, for that first few months after I got home, between July 12th and when my disability kicked in, that was real tough, because the money started slowing down as far as the donations were concerned. And it made it real difficult for us to be able to get from point A to point B in that time. I will say, luckily, that disability finally did come in. There were a couple of people that were very close to us who helped immensely, kind of right at the finish line. That kind of make or break point where we weren't sure what we were going to do to pay rent that month and to pay our bills that month. We just didn't know. And luckily, a family member came through in a very huge way without us knowing that it was coming. We went and checked the mail. There was a card in the mail. I opened it, and there was a significant amount of money in there that helped us pay rent and buy food and kind of cover those last few weeks before disability finally kicked in. So while I've said thank you in text messages and whatnot, hopefully this family member will see this video and know that sincerely thank you. You saved our asses at the very last possible minute, and we're very, very thankful for that. The last area that I want to talk about here, as far as asking for help, came again while I was in the hospital. And while a lot of my different medical teams, because there were several of them, kind of all had differing opinions on different treatment methods and what needed to happen. The one area that they all agreed on pretty significantly was that my life was pretty much going to change forever at that point, and that there was a good possibility that at least for the first couple of years after I got out of the hospital, I probably wouldn't be able to work. I wouldn't be able to go to a 9 to 5, the way I've always actually kind of enjoyed doing. We all complain about the grind and whatnot, but I've for the longest time kind of been a workaholic, and I value, unfortunately, I value myself based on my accomplishments, especially in the work environment. When the doctors told me that there was a good chance that I wouldn't be able to return to work, that really messed with me. That really kind of knocked me down, and I had a real hard time dealing with that because it meant I wouldn't be able to provide for my family the way that I had been for the last 3 years at that point, and that really hit my ego hard. Knowing that I wouldn't be able to do that. After thinking about it for a while and after talking with Rachel about it, we decided to talk to my doctor about getting me on some antidepressants. And we ran into kind of a snag because of all of the other meds that I was on at the time. We had to find something that wouldn't mess up everything else. So we ended up going with a pill called Celexa. And after being on the Celexa for about a week, I started noticing some improvements in my mood and my ability to deal with things and whatnot. Since I've been home, I've been put on a second antidepressant called Effexor, not because the Celexa wasn't working, but because one of the off-label uses for Effexor is joint pain and rheumatological kind of things. And after being on that for about 6 weeks, I've noticed that, again, my mood has gotten a little better, but also I'm dealing with less joint pain. There are still days that I'm almost debilitated from it, but those days have gotten to be fewer and further between. That was rough for me. There's a lot of stuff in my family, genetically speaking, that over the years has required a lot of medicine. Of course, I'm on a lot of medications for all of my conditions, and the idea again of asking for help was something that I had to check my ego. I had to say, okay, look, it's only one more pill, but it really could make the difference between life and death. There were plenty of days where I was pretty down, pretty hard on myself, dealing with the fact that I wouldn't be able to provide the same quality of life that I've been providing for my family for the last few years. And being able to know that I've got that extra little crutch. I've got an amazing support system with family and friends and even the people that I've encountered here on social media. Everybody's come together in ways that I didn't even think were possible and have been supportive, and I can't thank everybody enough for that. But there's a lot of stuff that goes on in your head that for whatever reason you can't talk about because you can't find the right words to explain why the world sucks and everybody's out to get you. Because truthfully, that's not the case, but your brain won't let you get past that. And, on days where I've missed a day or two of my antidepressants, I'm a different person and I don't like that person. I don't like the person that just snaps and goes from 0 to 10 for no reason. And luckily I've got Rachel to call me on that. I've got her to say, hey, have you taken your Celexa? Which is really code word for, hey, you're being an asshole. And I appreciate that she's there to check me on that, to make sure that I'm not an asshole unless somebody's really got it coming. But the reality is, asking for help, whether it's financially or just asking for somebody to talk to or asking for help clinically, whether it's Prozac or Celexa or any of the other thousands of pills that are out there, it's okay to ask for those things to help. And that's really the whole point of this video is I want that stigma of being weak for asking for help to go away, because you're not weak. You're at a point where you can't do it on your own anymore, and that's okay. If you need help, ask for it. If somebody mocks you or criticizes you or demeans you for asking for help, fuck them. Like, seriously, fuck that person. Go find someone else. Someone else out there will help you. Whether it's a medical professional, whether it's a friend, whether it's a family member, there are people out there who will help you. Keep looking until you find that person. And it may take days, it may take a couple of weeks, but that person's out there, and they will help. So I know this has been kind of a heavy video. I know it's been kind of not the comedy stylings that we've grown to to expect from this channel. But it would really mean a lot if you would do me a favor and give the video a thumbs up. Believe it or not, that stuff really does help a video get in front of more people. Part of the YouTube algorithm to get a video recognized. Sharing a video will also do a lot of things to help me, to help the channel, but it really could help someone else. Somebody else who's struggling with that inner turmoil of, how do I ask for help? Who do I ask for help? Are people going to mock me? Are people going to criticize me for asking for help? Am I a weaker person for asking for help? And the answer to that is no. But it really could make a difference if somebody else could see this. So whether you share it on Twitter or Facebook, whether you share it privately in an email or in a chat, it really could make a big difference in somebody's life to let them know that it's okay to ask for help. Or maybe it's you that needs help and you can send this to somebody to kind of open that chat, to start the conversation of saying, I need help and I don't know what to say. So if you could do that for me, that would be amazing. If you could, like I said, share it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, because I do have some other topics that I want to talk about that I think might be helpful for some people. That would be really amazing. I'd really appreciate it. So all that said and done, thank you very much for watching and participating in any of those other ways. I really do appreciate that kind of support. And I always appreciate the continued support that I get from you guys, even if it's just watching these videos. So I think I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you for your time. I always appreciate that. And I'll talk to you guys real soon in the next one.